Sean McVay, is Vic Fangio your daddy? Maybe. We'll find out on Sunday, but we're going to talk about all of the final things we have to ahead of Eagles-Rams Sunday Night Football. Deniz in studio coming up next on the PHLY Eagles podcast. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the PHLY Eagles podcast on a Friday afternoon, a beautiful rainy football day, and we are presented by Bet365. Download the Bet365 app and use code PHLY365 when you sign up. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Deniz in studio, the professor for Class in Session Friday. We may or may not hear from Zach at some point during the show. If he wants to pop in with some breaking DeVonta Smith news, we may hear from him. But otherwise, we're going to narrow in and clean up all the things we haven't talked about yet this week about Eagles-Rams. How you doing?
Doing well. How are you? Zach knows at this point that he's not supposed to call in while he's driving, right?
I would have. It's a good question because he's got the flight. I don't know if he's driving and parking or if he would be ride sharing over, because since Waymo is not yet available in Philadelphia.
Okay. So we might get a live ride share.
Yeah, I don't think that he would need to park at the. But I don't know. I think maybe he does. Maybe he is doing long-term parking or short-term parking.
Live Waymo would be incredible. He would be so excited.
Let us know in the chat if you think Zach is parking at the airport or leaving his car at the Eagles facility and then ride sharing over, or if he ride shared into the Novacare complex today and is hopping his way that way. I think he's actually parking at the airport.
All right.
It's tough.
Yeah.
Tough call. The breaking news from the Eagles practice facility. We don't have the injury report yet, but DeVonta Smith not practicing for the third consecutive day, has not practiced all week. Terrible news potentially for Fran Duffy's super sarcastic chances, as we see Fran in the chat with all the sickos. We say hi to Adam and Claire and all the classics in the chat. How much does that concern you if in fact DeVonta Smith does not play in this game, Deniz?
No, definitely a major concern. I mean, we saw what the offense looked like when A.J. Brown was also out, but like when A.J. Brown and DeVonta Smith were out, the offense looked ridiculous, like in Tampa Bay. And Jalen doesn't like to throw to other people that much. And you do wonder what kind of game plan the Rams would have if it's A.J. Brown and a bunch of guys, right, in terms of the receivers. So, yeah, we'll see. Now, Dallas Goedert had a big game against the Rams last year. They were trying to cover him with Michael Hoyt, who is, it looked ridiculous, and he had a huge play in that game against him in dropping into coverage, and they still drop that guy into coverage all the time. And every time they do it, I'm like, what? Why are they doing that? We'll get more into that when we talk about the Rams defense. But
defensive Taysom Hill, Fran calls him.
Yeah, it's good. I liked his description. Yeah, like kind of random white guy running around doing unconventional things, except on the defensive side of the ball. That's about right. Yeah, you look at him and you're like, why is
That's
he?
about Hoyt.
You guys talked about the pronunciation. So anytime you see an OE like that in a German-looking name, it means that the original German was an O with an umlaut, the letter. Okay. So I think the proper German pronunciation is something more like Höcht, something like that. So Hoyt is like a bastardization that's happened after whenever they immigrated over here. But we have that letter in Turkish as well, the O with the two dots over it. So actually, one of the things we
Mesut Ozil.
Yeah, exactly. So when we were doing the looking for names for Evren, that was our first rule, was like not have any of those Turkish characters. because people get it wrong, and then
Sure.
like, you're not able to always type it that way and things like that. So
What was your second rule?
the second rule was that it had to not be just obscene profanity in English. So like a very nice boy's name in Turkish is Ufuk. U-F-U-K. And there was a guy named Ufuk in the department at Penn as a professor when I was a grad student there. And there was a guy, and I'm not kidding, there was another professor, I'm not going to name names as to who the other professor was, who just flat out called him "you fuck" every single time he talked about him. And it was so casual. It was like, oh yeah, like me and you fuck were talking, and we think you should TA this class or whatever. And I was just like, do I tell him? It's not like, surely someone else has told him. But yeah, so that was our second rule, was to not name him that. No.
That's so good. Although it would have been funny to go through life that way, but I guess.
Yeah, it's a good test of character, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
There you go. Okay. Let's start. We've got you prepared some graphs for us. We want to take a bit of a zoom out on the state of, I think you want to talk mostly about the Eagles offense, but just sort of the unvariance of its performance over the past.
Yeah, well, actually, I mean, like, I think it's a good. It kind of fits in with my narrative of the last couple of years, which I know we don't fully.
Barkley is terrible.
It's just like completely ridiculous. All I'm gonna do is just I don't know what to do. I'm just gonna ignore that. I will talk a little bit about how they're probably running it a little too much this year in a few minutes, but. Yeah, my
you
main.
Also would have paid Daniel Jones.
No, that's not me. That's not me. There are people who would have, but so my narrative is that the offense has basically been the same like throughout all these years, and the huge thing that's been wildly different across the different years, and this is the Sirianni Hurts years basically, is how good the defense has been. And these graphs so Julia, you can cue the first one. I have a couple of different visuals for this. So those of you listening on audio, I can just kind of describe. If you look at like offensive and defensive EPA per drive by season, and you put basically the 128 teams on the same graph, where it's like 32 teams times 4 seasons, the Eagles' offense is almost always in exactly the same part of the graph. Like they're always ranked like somewhere. Definitely above average, not one of the elite teams, right? They're always like somewhere in that like 70th, 80th-ish percentile every single year, 21, 22, 23, 24. They're all almost exactly the same, whereas the defenses are wildly different. The defense this year is just absolutely awesome. The defense last year was absolutely terrible. The other two are somewhere in between. So the main difference between these teams has been how good the defense is, and of course, like we're very excited about the defense this year because they are like just very clearly the best one. And on this point, by the way, any discussion about whether this year's defense or the 2022 defense was better, I don't find particularly serious, like as a conversation. Like I've heard other people talking about this, and I don't know what like. Do you think it's even close?
I don't. But I could see how people could think you could compare the two at least.
I think people are into sacks and that kind of thing. But like, I mean, this year's defense is better in EPA per drive, points per drive, series conversion rate, success rate. Way better in EPA against the rush, tied in EPA against the drop back, and also better in like some of the noisy things like red zone percentage and all of that.
It's also better like aesthetically.
Yeah, much better aesthetically, and also the opponents faced in 2022 were famously. Very weak, especially the quarterbacks. One of the only good quarterbacks they went up against the whole year was Dak Prescott, and he completely lit them up. He didn't throw like a single incompletion against zone coverage in that game, et cetera. It was like a shootout in that game. This year, the defense has faced, for what it's worth, Jordan Love, Joe Burrow, Jaden Daniels was playing incredibly well, like coming into that game. So there's a big difference there. So I just don't think there's like any comparison in terms of which of the two defenses is better. And then just kind of going through, looking at the offense, I guess we can continue to some of the other.
Well, I want to go look back at number one because
let's look at it.
The question from Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman would be, it's probably not a good thing that the 2021 cast, like the offensive roster, is performing at the same level as the 2024 roster. That team obviously didn't have AJ. And now 22 is just a little bit ahead.
Right. So,
but,
Julia, actually, if we're going to talk about offense, we can just look at the offensive one. That's that breaks it down by, I think it's like number 3 or something.
Okay. Yeah, like it's not good enough.
Yeah, there it is.
That this offense is in the same quadrant as 2022. The expectations should be higher.
Yeah, when you do the graph with like EPA per dropback and EPA per rush, the 24 and 21 logos are touching each other on the graph. Like, so they're very, very similar. Now, I will say the 2024 EPA per dropback is the highest of the 4. And it's an interesting thing to note, and it's one of the things I wanted to talk about. It's an interesting thing to note in the context of the discussion of what's wrong with the passing game, right? And I'll admit, this is a confusing picture because the 4 seasons are so similar to each other in terms of the final efficiency, right? Like, that's what we're looking at here is EPA per play. We can look at success rate, which is what the other graph is. The offensive success rate graph is very similar to this. The Eagles' offense is always in the upper right quadrant, always one of the better offenses, and always just kind of short of being elite, right? And what we want, looking at this roster, looking at these wide receivers, this offensive line, is we want the passing game at least to be elite. Now, the running game has been closer to elite in terms of EPA per play. The 2022 one is like the highest one on the whole graph. But yeah, I mean, there's this like question of like, when you watch it, it seems like it's not getting as much out of the talent as it could, right?
Yeah, and that's part of why we didn't even talk about. They made schematic changes, in theory at least. You know, bringing in Kellen Moore to run the offense. Yeah, like this is good, but I would be unhappy with this if I was Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman. Don't you think?
Yeah, no, I think that's right. I think as pleasantly surprised as they must be about how the defense actually is playing at an elite level now, they have to be somewhat disappointed with this. And in terms of the bye week shift towards a heavy run game, I mean, like, I don't know. It really depends on.
Look at that, Julia. Nicely done.
Yeah, that is good. It really depends on. I like how you put us in a part of the graph where there are like no teams too. Like that's extra. Doing. Yeah, extra impressive.
We are very good at passing, but we cannot run.
Yeah. So. What's that? Oh, us. Yeah, we are. We're elite. Yes. Elite in the dropback game. Yes. Yeah, exactly. Comparable to
this is actually your ideal offense.
If I move a little bit this way, I become the best. Even better than better than the Ravens this year.
This is your perfect offense.
I don't actually like not running well. I just don't like running this much. So that was the thing I was going to say. Like for what it's worth, 2024's offense has the highest EPA per dropback of any of the 4 years.
Right up there.
Highest dropback success rate as well. Julia, there is a success version of this graph as well, which is a similar picture where they're all kind of close to each other. And the other thing is this year has the lowest rush success rate, and it's the only year in which passing has been more successful than running. And of course, they're running it a lot, and sometimes that's going to hurt the success rate because you're running it to set up more runs and that kind of thing. But the main...
you think you need to call them morons, but...
I think the main difference between this year and the other years in terms of like one of the issues, when you look at all the metrics, the frequency with which they get to the red zone, all those things has been the same. The main difference is the red zone efficiency is the lowest of the 4 years this year. I mean, it's at 57%, which is still above average, but it was at 68% in 2022. And you could argue that was just like noisy and maybe they were outperforming and all of that, but that's driving the entire difference in points per drive between this year and that year. Points per drive this year is 2.62. It was 2.86 that year. If you just play with the red zone number, it immediately becomes the same. So the red zone has been the thing. And then the other big difference is the run rate. I mean, they're running the ball on half the plays this year. It's never been above 43% before. Last year, it was only 41%.
What was it if you just looked at the second half of 2021?
I mean, probably really. Like,
no, I'm not.
It would have been a good question before the show.
Well, I know, but that probably lines up,
it went up a lot, but it didn't go up by as much as as it has this year. And at no point in 2021 did they become like the most run-heavy team in the league. And the shift happened around the same time in the season, right? It happened like a little bit later, week 7, maybe. Yeah, that's true. And then the other thing, and we keep referencing this, is like the DVOA of the offense this year is disappointingly low. So they are, what are they? They're 14th in DVOA, 16th in passing DVOA.
Yeah, that's terrible.
Yes, that is true. But looking at this graph, it doesn't look that bad, right? So the question becomes like, why is the DVOA so low? And just looking at it, first of all, there's a huge cluster of teams like right around the same number. So just one good game could push that 14th up to 7th or something like that. You're going to argue, well, they should be in the top 5. This is more of a comment on DVOA than like how good this team is. But the strength of opponents is really driving that DVOA this year. Because like DVOA is basically EPA per play with like a little bit of opponent adjustment. That's basically what their formula is. And so it's just that the defenses played this year have been so bad. Like they played against like some of the worst defenses in the league and haven't destroyed them, right? The way the Lions destroyed Jacksonville last week, right? You basically have to have a game like that against Jacksonville in order to not be punished by playing them. And so in terms of the DVOA, that's true. It's true. Yeah. But like the reason that the DVOA ranking doesn't look great is in large part due to that. And they've been super consistent from game to game is the other thing. That when I look at like the game by game thing that I have, they haven't had a single game all year in the bottom 40th percentile by EPA per play, by success rate, by points per drive, by EPA per drive, like not a single one. The Tampa Bay game was barely in that for EPA per play, but even that game wasn't that for success rate, for example. So like they haven't had this like,
but have they hit
up and down?
Have they hit the ceiling?
Well, that's the thing. Right. It's like they hit the ceiling against Cincinnati, right? Okay. Like that game was one of the best EPA per drive games of the year in the NFL this year. But that was really the only game where that happened. So that's the thing. But that's exactly my point.
They're playing within this box.
Yeah, they're stuck in this like we're just in the top quartile, barely in the top quartile, always in the top quartile, but never one of the best teams in it, right? And so before the season, the question was, would that be enough? The answer was no. But now that the defense is like literally the best defense in the league since the bye, it might be enough, right?
It might be.
Yeah.
And you cross your fingers and hope you get another Bengals game spike when it matters.
That's right. Like the kind of performance that the offense had in the Super Bowl against Kansas City, right? Like you would think with this defense would be enough to have a better result. Yeah.
All right. Well, I think we are actually going to hear from our man in just a minute.
So
before we do that, let's take a quick commercial pause. Leaky pipes, they're all over the place. You know about them. You've heard about them. If you have one yourself, it's time to call Ace Hardware Home Services, because Ace Hardware Home Services, Ace is not just the helpful hardware folks now, they're also the helpful hardware home service folks. They can come fix the problems that you have in your house for you, and they're going to do it with a smile on their face and incredible proficiency. If you have a plumbing issue or a heating issue or a cooling issue, Ace Hardware Home Services has the trusted pros to keep your home humming all year long. Ace Hardware Home Services, we're bringing helpful home, the helpful you love, from the store now to your front door. Visit Ace Hardware Home Services online at www.acehardwarehomeservices.com to get started on your next project. And speaking of your next project, it's appropriate that we're talking about this before Zach joins us and before he makes his trip to Los Angeles. It's time to talk about our friends at Blue Chew. Blue Chew is an online service that delivers the same active ingredients as Viagra, Cialis, and Levitra, but at a fraction of the cost and in a chewable form. The process is simple. Sign up at BlueChew.com, consult with one of their licensed medical providers, and once you're approved, you will receive your prescription within days. Blue Chew tablets are made in the good old US of A, baby. And they're prepared and shipped directly to your door. The best part is it is all done online. That means no visits to the doctor's office, no awkward conversations, no waiting in line at the pharmacy. You can take them anytime, day or night, so you can plan ahead or be ready whenever the opportunity arises. You could be missing out on the best sex of your life, and that's where Blue Chew comes in. They say there's nothing sexier than confidence, and Blue Chew can help give you the confidence when it counts. And, great news, we've got a special deal for our listeners. Try Blue Chew free when you use our promo code ALLCITY at checkout. Just pay $5 of shipping. That's bluechew.com, BLUECHEW.com, promo code ALLCITY, one word, to receive your first month free. Visit bluechew.com for more details and important safety information. And we thank Blue Chew for sponsoring this podcast. Do we have our man? We got him. Ladies and gentlemen, we got him. Zach Berman, live from the way to the airport, the NovaCare complex. Where are you, Zach? There he is.
Yeah, I'm at the what's going on? I'm at the NovaCare complex. I'm making sure, I wanted to see you guys. I feel a sense of obligation. I feel bad I'm not in studio with you, but I want to make sure that I'm here on the show with the latest news before I'm on that plane heading LA.
All right. We know you don't have a ton of time, so we'll let you make this a Blue Chew quickie here. Give us the big things that we need to know from the NovaCare complex.
Yeah, I think DeVonta Smith's status is really the big thing. I was on the practice field; they were inside, so and DeVonta Smith was not out there. Nick Sirianni, you were there, Bo. Nick Sirianni did not say much about DeVonta's status. I spoke in the locker room to a few guys, AJ Brown included, and they're being real tight-lipped about DeVonta Smith's status. So there was one point when AJ was asked about how this offense would be if DeVonta doesn't play, and he's like, that's a setup question. I'm not going to go there. We're still working through that, right? And so, look, as you well know, and as Professor Selman well knows, that if a player doesn't practice on Friday, that's often not a good sign for his status on Sunday. Now, players who are established, who have kind of equity built up, it's not out of the question. But I would think for a game in Los Angeles, if a player has an injured hamstring and doesn't practice on Friday, I'd be surprised if he plays Sunday. We'll see. The injury report should come out at 4:00, and we'll have a better idea then. But I'm operating right now as if he's not going to play.
And so, what do you think that would mean for the offense?
Yeah, I would think a little more 12 personnel. That would be my guess. They've already leaned into 12 personnel this year. We saw them do that when AJ was out. So that's something that they could do. I would expect more Johnny Wilson. I think Jahan Dotson obviously continues to have a role, but I know they like Johnny Wilson. And then really relying on this running game. And it's the run offense has been obviously what their identity, if we're going to use that buzzword, what it's been that since the bye week. I spoke to Saquon, and Saquon thinks that they continue to that the offense, there's still more room to grow with this offense. And so I think you'll see a lot of Saquon, but AJ is still elite. And I would imagine more targets toward AJ would also be a byproduct of this.
Yeah, just to follow up on that, if you're wondering what the offenses looked like with AJ and no DeVonta, then we have never seen it. The only game that AJ played that DeVonta didn't was week 18 last year against the Giants. And if you remember, AJ only played 12 snaps, got injured, left the game so that he could, rest for the, and then he missed the playoff game too. Like there hasn't been a single game since AJ Brown has been in Philadelphia that he played that DeVonta Smith did not play. Neither of them missed any games in 2022. So we haven't seen what it looks like when a defense is able to try to take AJ away when the second best receiver is significantly inferior to him.
You're absolutely right. He said as much today when he said he's never been out there without DeVonta, so he doesn't know. And when it was framed to him the way the coverages were when DeVonta was in and he was out, he said he really didn't notice that to be the case, that it was all focused on DeVonta. But yeah, I would imagine that even with more attention on AJ, the Eagles will still feed him quite a bit.
All right. Anything else football-wise that you need to pass on before we have a couple non-football things for you?
Yeah, Saquon didn't want to really speak about the Daniel Jones situation. He said he's very close with Daniel Jones. They've been in communication, yesterday, but he didn't want to get too into that. I did ask him about the possibility of a running back winning MVP because it's traditionally been a quarterback award. And he said that's a conversation we'll have later this year. And Jalen Carter did not know that he played every snap in that game until his mother sent him a tweet the next day that referenced it. But he said he felt good. I mean, he played a greater volume of snaps against Buffalo last year, I believe. But still, the fact that he's playing every snap in this game, he says it's a testament to his conditioning. It's a testament to like the trust that they have in him. We spoke with Fran yesterday about the game that he had against the Rams last year. He says it's like the same offensive line, a different center. He thought he played well in that game last year, but he thought he had some other good games last year too. So that was kind of catching up with Jalen Carter. And yeah, no, I think those are kind of the big ticket football items from the locker room today. There was some small things for some stories I'm working on that you'll see in the next week and a half to 2 weeks.
All right, we look forward to that. Give us the behind the scenes on your travel plans here. We have some question about if you're parking at the airport or ride sharing over. What are your plans for the flight? And are you going to be able to make it to the Intuit Dome tonight?
The Intuit Dome.
That's right.
I am heading over to the airport from here. And my flight's at 3:50. I'll be fine. No worries there. Got some work to do on the plane. Looking forward to that. Some transcribing, some writing. The injury report will come out while I'm on the plane, so you'll see tweet. What's up, blue sky? What's the noun for that?
It's a skeet.
A skeet, a tweet, a skeet,
I
a thread.
don't actively use that, but that's what it is. Yeah, it's a skeet.
Okay, I will put that all out there. My plane lands tonight at 6:45.
What's that?
The game is at.
Okay.
My plane lands at 6:45. The game is at 7:30. So I don't have tickets yet because thanks to Game Time, I can wait till last minute. Great deals, last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. But I need to make sure the plane lands on time. I need to get my rental car. I need to get a ticket, and I need to either park and take a ride share over or find inexpensive parking somewhere near the arena. But I heard that Los Angeles is a late arriving crowd as it is, so maybe I won't be an outlier if I got there 6 minutes into the first quarter.
And do you park at the airport, or do you leave the car here and drive and ride share over?
That's a very specific question. Today I will park at the airport. There are other times when I ride share over, but today I will park at the airport.
Got it. And then the last one from us is some requests from the chat. Do you have your plane hat on you, and are you willing to share it with the audience?
I would share it, but it's in the car, honestly. So I have a change. I have a change of clothes in the car that I have to change into. So maybe I'll find a Wawa parking lot, or maybe I'll just do it in the parking garage, right? Backseat of the car. But be
a man.
Yeah, I will definitely not do that. But yeah, no, I'm eager to get out to LA. As I told my son this morning, this is the last flight of the year, and he said until the playoffs. He sounds pretty optimistic, right? So we'll see, but it could potentially be the last flight until Detroit. Maybe it's the last flight until New Orleans.
New Orleans, yeah. Speaking of which, and also speaking of Game Time, I got my flight to New Orleans. I'm very confident that I will be there. I got the Airbnb, got everything. So if my optimism is anything that affects how optimistic other fans are, I will say last year, even when the team was 10-1, I did not take this step to book a place or book a flight or anything like that.
And how early did you do it in 22?
Right around the same time.
Okay. And,
yeah, right around the same time.
Were there any other miss ones in the past?
No. Nope.
Okay. So you're one for one. You didn't do it ahead of time in 2017?
Well, Evren was like 1 month old or something. So, yeah, that wasn't going to happen that year.
Okay.
Yeah.
So one for one.
Yeah.
Okay.
That should be the headline of the show. That should be the headline, that you booked your flight to
Airbnb already, and then going to use Game Time for the, the.
I don't want to, Zach, I don't want to make you late, but do you want to get into the makeup test thing?
Sure. I have about 4 minutes. I want to roll by 2:35.
I was going to be nice to you and not talk about what an awful analogy the Mario Kart thing was, but
yeah, the Mario Kart's not a good analogy. I was trying to think. I'm still workshopping the analogy. One analogy I came up with is, like, there are sometimes when you have a bill where if you pay the bill early, you get 10% discount or whatever it may be, right? And then if you pay on time, you pay the full price. And then if you pay afterwards, there's a 10% penalty. So I would say that converting on first and second down would be like paying the bill early. Converting on third down would be like paying the bill on time. And then converting on fourth down would be like the 10%.
Well, I don't know
penalty.
if that's true either, because you don't pay a penalty for getting the first down on third or fourth.
Okay, so
yeah.
So I'm saying, but third down is within. Yeah. But I don't think, I agree converting on first and second down is better than converting on third down, but I don't think converting on third down is problematic.
My point
I think
was
if you are
the best offenses are the ones who don't need as many third downs, as opposed to the ones who convert a higher percentage of third downs. And my main issue isn't with the fact that people talk about third down conversion rate. It's that people talk about that ahead of the rate that they don't need third down. And so it's kind of like a detail.
Okay.
And the bigger picture is how often you even need it. And when you look at any standard mainstream NFL statistics package, it has the third down conversion percentage, but it doesn't have the percentage of series in which a team got a first down before third down. And that's the thing I'm trying to change, is like I'm trying to like get people to think more about that. That's why I'm doing these like baseball analogies with series conversion rate and everything, because I want people to have a better sense of what the averages are, what's good, what's bad for that, because I think that that's more important. The Rams are a good example. They're terrible on third down. They're like 27th or 28th in the league, but they're fourth at not needing it. And so their overall series conversion rate ends up being 13th, because they drop from fourth after second down to 13th overall because they're so bad at third down and they don't really go for it on fourth down. And so, like, the overall number there is still 13th. They're still pretty good. And
I think marketing-wise, we need to work on series conversion rate.
Like, the name's not great, right?
Yeah.
No, I know. Sometimes it's like call it like moving the sticks rate or something.
Yeah,
but that doesn't really work either. Yeah, I need something better. Yeah, for sure.
Chain
I actually think we agree here. No, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I wouldn't want to get the third down, but where I guess our disagreement is, and I don't think the volume of third downs matter as much. I think the percentage matters there.
He's just talking to professor. Third downs, he doesn't like the makeup test thing.
I got you.
So third downs, no, but in any data point, you're looking for inflection points, right? And third downs are often inflection points within a game. Because there's a material difference that occurs.
Because you let it be, and that's the difference between offensive third down conversion and defensive. So like in this conversation, it was a few weeks ago, you mentioned a similar thing about defenses being good on third down. Completely different. Yeah. Because the defense has to get to third down and win it in order to win the process, unless they get a turnover on first or second down. But those are rare enough that that's not usually the way you're going to do it. So it's very different for a defense than it is for an offense, because the defense's goal is to get the third down. And so I think it actually matters more like how good the defense is at getting out of third down, because like the only way they can succeed is to get there and then finish the job, whereas an offense can completely avoid it. And so I just think that like there's a big difference in like when like people talk about offenses and how good they are at third down all the time. But I think that like that's a second order fact compared to how often they avoid it. Whereas defenses like need to be good on third down to finish. There's no other way they can win, right? Unless they're always getting turnovers, right? Which isn't going to happen. So, yeah.
Okay. Zach, enjoy your flight.
Yeah.
Give yourself,
Thank you.
I don't know, 45 minutes of not working on the flight. Give yourself some time. Get some rest, please. You got a long stretch of travel ahead on Sunday, Monday, so be kind to yourself.
You know what? My wife has reminded me multiple times that this was the weekend last year that I went to Kansas City with pneumonia. And so she's made abundantly clear, Zach, you need to take care of yourself. If you are sick for Thanksgiving, she's going to be disappointed in me. So I do need to. I won't be burning the midnight oil well, I will literally be on Sunday, but these next 2 nights, I hope to have this Oura ring show up with about 6 to 8 hours of sleep, and I'll be good.
I want you to get, I don't think this is too much to ask. I want you to get a combined at least 10 hours of sleep over the next 2 nights.
Oh, if I don't get a combined 10 hours of sleep over the next 2 nights, then I made a mistake going out today. And bottom line, because the whole point of going out today is to be easier on my body than like I did last year, which was like a 30-hour trip to LA, which just kills you.
Target? Can we get to 14? Is that crazy?
Yeah, my target's 12 to 16 over, hopefully 14 to 16. I mean, 16 would be like, that would be like, I would be jumping through hoops if I got to 16. You're not going to get to 16, but 14 would be 14 if I get parade. Yeah, 14 would be the perfect start to next week, which is one of my favorite weeks of the year, Thanksgiving.
All right. Well, Zach, go get him. We appreciate you joining us, making time. We love you. Okay. I think I'm going to guess he gets 11.5. That's going to be my official guess. Better than normal, but still enough to.
And it's going to be very skewed to the first night, right? Like he'll get more the first night than the second. Is that right?
Probably, even though it's a late game.
Just the way
he won't be able to stay in bed.
Right.
All right. Let's keep talking about the offense before we get to our next break. What you like to
I mean, I was going to talk about like DeVonta Smith targets and wide receiver usage rate and things like that because I know that's been a big topic this week. But if DeVonta Smith's not playing in the game, maybe we can save that and just I'll ask you, like, how many targets is AJ Brown going to get in this game if
all of them
if DeVonta Smith doesn't play? I mean, he's been consistently at around somewhere between 25 and 27%
Do you
of
think
his routes
let's
he gets targeted, which is among the highest in the league.
Versus the field in targets for this game. Who would you take?
I'll go field just because I do think Dallas Goedert
Yeah.
will be an important part of the game plan in this game. And then we'll see how the Rams match 12 personnel this year. Looking back at the game last year, I know they had a different defensive coordinator because they had Raheem Morris, but similar kind of family of, Chris Shula was promoted. Like he didn't come from outside the building. So their defensive structure is more or less the same. And they were matching 12 personnel with base early in that game. And the Eagles just threw it on them, completed the first 5 passes. And then after that, it just turned into more of a 11 personnel versus penny personnel matchup. It'll be interesting to see how they match the Eagles this year because they have one of the most diverse combinations of defensive personnel packages of any team in the league. And do you want to talk about that now, or do you want to we're going to talk about the Rams defense later, or now? It's up
Whatever
to you.
you want.
All right, we can talk about it now since we're talking about Dallas Goedert. I think the Eagles will change the way they call plays, right, based on how the defense is playing and what personnel grouping they're playing and all that. The Rams are very strange. They're second in base personnel, 37%. They're also third in dime personnel at 23%.
So
they play nickel less than anyone else in the league by a mile. They only play 37% nickel. The league average is 66. They're 32nd by a mile in that. And within nickel, they actually have 3 different nickel package. Well, they have like a big nickel where they have Quentin Lake playing in the slot, and Quentin Lake is a safety in base. They have a small nickel where Kobe Durant, who was the nickel last year but is starting on the outside this year, kicks inside, and Ahkello Witherspoon comes in and plays on the outside. And A.J. Brown has had big games against Ahkello Witherspoon in the past, so that's something to note. When Witherspoon does come in, he's always the left corner, and so that's something that the Eagles could match A.J. Brown up on him if they use that small nickel package. They also have a couple of different big dime packages. They have a 4-1-6.
Okay.
They have a 5-0-6. They have 2 different rookie safeties, Cameron Kinchins and Jalen McCullough, who take turns coming in on those, depending on which one it is. McCullough comes in when it's 5-0-6, and sometimes he's the kind of fake linebacker. Sometimes Cam Curl plays in that role. They just have a lot of different things that they do. And so if you're wondering if the Eagles are going to start this game with the let's try all the different personnel groupings and see how they match thing, this is like the ultimate game to do that, because they have so many different personnel packages that Kellen Moore, Sirianni, they're going to be wondering like how are they going to match with, how are they going to handle this? Like, how are they going to handle the 13 and 12 and don't you think the Johnny Wilson 11 versus the non-Johnny Wilson 11?
Don't you think theoretically that the 5-0-6 gambit to have no linebackers on the field is probably a good one to make against a quarterback who doesn't like to throw it over the middle of the field?
Throw it to the middle of the field.
Like,
yeah, no,
it's kind of a good matchup.
It's a good point, and it's funny because when you look at it on film, it really does look like there's no one in the middle of the field when they play that way. Like seriously, like there's like the five guys are along the defensive
like the ultimate
line.
Prove it. Like,
and one of the safeties is like thinking about coming down into that area, but doesn't really even look like they're standing up as a linebacker. So it's a very interesting defense because. But I also think if there is no Devontae,
I don't like the Eagles aren't going to be leaning on a ton of 11. I think it is more likely that they're going to be mostly living in 12.
Yeah, it's very possible. The Eagles are already one of the highest 12 personnel teams in the league. Like it's like fourth highest, but very close to being first for the season. And it's been more recently. We joked about how it was funny that they went to more 12 personnel when Dallas Goedert was out. Like you'd think that would be, so yeah, it'll be interesting to see. It'll also be interesting to see how the run game is affected by that because, looking at Fran's notes about the Rams, and you guys talked about a little bit on the show, like they play with 5 defensive linemen on the field a lot, and how you're going to block them, like what kind of responsibility you're going to give the tight ends in the blocking game is going to be something that that we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Like I'm very curious about that. Last year, late in the game, the Eagles went crazy with the gap scheme runs. It was counter, quarterback counter, bash counter, read. Not a lot of like big plays out of it, but enough to move the chains and kind of like run out the clock near the end. So I'm very curious, like what kind of approach the Eagles take to this, like where they end up being happy with, like what personnel they want from the Rams on the field, and also like what part of the field to attack.
Gotcha. All right, more to come just after this. How low can you go? I'm talking about floors, not limbo. We're talking about Empire Today. Deniz is so fed up, he's leaving. He's just fleeing the studio and cannot believe that we would talk about floors, but that's okay. Empire Today, you know about Empire Today. They're the best in the business, and they're giving you the highest quality. They're not going to give you some Bobo jabroni product. They're going to work hard to figure out what works best for you, and they're not going to do the game where they try to undercut the competitors with the kinds of products that they wouldn't put in their own home or their worst enemy's home, frankly. Empire Today, they keep shopping for floors simple with a curated product selection. Their philosophy is to help you find what you need, not to overwhelm you with thousands of choices and substitutes. What they leave out of their selection is just as important as what they put in. Empire's product team exhaustively combs through thousands of product samples each year to find the perfect styles. They don't want that decision fatigue hoisted upon you. They're going to give you the choices that they know are best for you, and you can go from there. Schedule a free in-home estimate today, and the good news is our listeners can receive a $350 off discount when they use the promo code PHLY. Restrictions apply. See EmpireToday.com for details. And then it's time to talk about our beloved Julia. Because it's engagement season, people. And if you're feeling the bug, if you're thinking, Julia did it, I'm ready to do it too, you got to head over to Golden Nugget. Because Golden Nugget Jewelers is where Philadelphia gets engaged. Chestnut and 8th in downtown Philly, a family-owned and operated business since 1987. If you are getting engaged, they have a wide assortment of rings and wedding bands to fit anyone's style. And when you do it, you receive a final cleaning and written appraisal with every engagement ring purchase. But let's say you've already made the engagement plunge. You're looking for a little special present for your sweetie or it's pre-engagement, it's not just engagement rings that they have at Golden Nugget Jewelers. They've got watches, diamond necklaces, diamond bracelets, earrings, and more. Maybe you're thinking about a holiday season purchase. Why not? Santa needs some loving too, you know? Golden Nugget Jewelers, you deserve an expert and the best price. Golden Nugget Jewelers, where Philly gets engaged. Head over to goldennuggetjewelers.com to learn more. All right, where'd you go? To kick Saquon Barkley when he's down somewhere?
It's the first time I've really had to pee during the show. I always wondered, like, how you guys do it without any breaks, and then this is the first time it's happened. So I was lucky enough to have lunch before the show with Bo and Sheil. And marked the first time that I've ever had lunch with two people whose names are on the T-shirt that I'm wearing. So it was it was pretty cool. But had a lot of tea during lunch. So yeah, that was the
metaphorically.
Getting
we were
old.
talking a lot of smack. Spilled some tea, or
nah, just I've never used that expression, but yeah, drank a lot of green tea. Yeah.
All right. Anything else on offense that's catching your eyes?
On offense,
Those eyeballs of yours.
Well, yeah. So play action is something that we've been asking for, and we've been getting it, right? If you look at the last 4 weeks, so if you look at just the first 7 weeks, the Eagles were 20% play action on dropbacks, which was 24th in the league. If you look at just the last 4 games, 33%, which is 5th most in the NFL. So actually, like, and if you just look at shotgun play action, which is the main kind of play action they run, they actually are like very good at it in terms of success rate and all that, and also have been doing it much more frequently. And so when we're talking about all the variety that we saw in the run game last week, the wham and the trap and all that stuff that made us all so excited, a lot of toss recently, under center toss, which is something that could very easily also translate to play action. Haven't really seen that yet, but like we're probably going to soon. I think that there's more and more of this kind of marrying. I know you love the marrying the run game to the pass game stuff.
Philly gets engaged, man.
Yeah, and I appreciate that you asked Kellen more about the Jahan Dotson orbit motion package. So this is not a big deal maybe, but like they did run it 6 times in the game, including 5 in the first half. And when I was charting the film, I noticed that all 6 were different plays. And that's not something you normally see. Like normally when there's a package like that, there's like 2 plays or something like that. So, they did an outside zone action away and then threw it to the orbit on the first one. The second one, they faked the orbit pass, and it was supposed to be a pump screen that didn't work. They had to throw it away. In one of them, there was a curl flat away from the orbit, and they threw that. And then the runs were all different, too. They did an inside zone run away from the orbit on one of them with an RPO bubble available to Jahan Dotson on one. They did a pin pull run away from the orbit. And then they did an inside zone read where Jalen had the option to keep it, and they didn't block the backside edge, also away from the orbit. So the point is that, like, there's this variety and there's thought that's clearly gone into how can we have our run game and our pass game kind of work together. The Jahan Dotson package is just one example of that. And I think we're going to hopefully see more and more of that and eventually be, aesthetically think that the offense looks a little bit better than it has. And I was going to ask you, like, mini buy, they talk about self-scout all the time. What do you think they're focusing on?
Getting better. Shoring up the fundamentals.
You're just not going to answer the question?
Well, I was going to tell you I did some digging in the locker room this week on the trap wham.
Ah, yeah,
because
like that.
It moved the needle for you and Fran so much. I had to get the skinny on it. So I asked some of the offensive linemen, like, how did that come to be? Was it something you expected to be in the game plan this week? And Lane said it was like a halftime adjustment thing. They did have it in the back of their mind that this could be a game for it. Yeah. But at halftime, they talked to Stout and were like, "This is going to work." And so he was very happy with it, as you saw on film. But he's like, the key for me is like I got to get out of my stance so quick. Yeah. On that. He's got those old man bones, but he was happy to make it happen.
I'm going to throw you a bone and just mention that it was Kenny Gainwell on those runs and not Saquon and wondering and wondering.
You think that was part of the conversation?
Wondering if it's one of many.
This is the most important play of the half. We need the better running back on the field.
I was just going to ask you if you asked anyone about if there's like anything specific about those plays that it was Kenny, or did Kenny just happen to be in there for them?
It's a good question. I don't know the answer to that, and I would wonder. Because you would think, in theory, it would be the opposite, where if it's Kenny, you might think that the defensive line is a little bit less likely to just fly upfield because they're more expecting it. I guess
Well,
Well,
but if they're pass rushing,
Yeah,
it works. Yeah, it still works.
So maybe it is. Maybe they are more.
Those
likely to,
those runs, if they're blocked well, are probably like running back proof. You know what I mean? Like it almost doesn't matter. I mean, of course, Saquon's more likely to turn it into a touchdown, like once he's through,
Right.
as we saw on the two that did become touchdowns later, which were of course different plays. One was a split zone and one was a toss. But yeah, it was very exciting to see those. Lane was asked in the locker room by Jeff McLean when the last time he did those were, and he couldn't remember. But of course, yeah. I mean, I can tell you, it was the last time they ran wham or trap was against San Francisco last year, Week 13.
Okay,
and the last time that Lane Johnson was the trapper on such a play was the week before against Buffalo. And then in 2022, they actually had a game against Green Bay that Lane referenced where they ran it something like 8 or 9 times in the game, where with Lane as the trapper, like just like a right tackle trap, and they just kept on going to it.
And this was also your favorite moment of the mic'd up this week.
Oh, that was awesome. So mic'd up this week, if you haven't seen it, Slay is mic'd up in the game against Washington, and he's on the sideline watching the trap play that Kenny Gainwell hit. And they show the play, and then they show Slay, and he's like, "Go, Kenny, like hit it, Kenny," or something like that. And I was thinking, like, does Slay even like know like what the different runs are or anything? And then it continues, and he looks at the screen and he goes, "Nice trap." And I just thought that was like the coolest. It was just like the coolest thing ever, that like the corner is like, looking at that and being like, "Nice trap," and that he appreciated, what a cool call it was. Yeah.
If I flip it on you, what do you think their focus on was in the mini bye?
Yeah, see, I've been wondering about this because at the bye there were so many major issues that it was like, take your pick, like you got to fix everything. And now there are a lot of things that are working pretty well. It's so hard to say. I mean, like the red zone, I guess, high red zone. Yeah, high red zone. And there you wonder about the philosophy. Right. Yeah. Like, and we've been talking about this for years now, where they love to run it. They love to get close. They love to try to set up the short yardage situations. And we haven't seen them be very successful in that high red zone area. So yeah, right now the Eagles are, this continues kind of to be a trend, 11th in red zone, despite being second in goal to go. Like, like they're so good once they get to goal to go. But between the 10 and the 20, basically, they're just like a lot of drives are ending there.
Okay. We have made it almost to the hour mark without talking about the thing that is the thumbnail and the headline on this show. So let's flip it to the other side of the ball. And a lot of conversation this week in the the film Twitter about this rematch between Vic Fangio and Sean McVay.
Yeah.
The storytelling that Vic Fangio essentially changed the course of Sean McVay's offensive philosophy.
Yeah.
Because how badly he sunned him in 2018, which then led to the Belichick game plan in the Super Bowl. That shut them down, and McVay goes from that and totally reimagines his running game. He wants to abandon the outside zone. He wants to get bulkier inside. What are your expectations for how Fangio will approach this matchup?
Yeah, I really enjoyed your interview with Jordan Rodriguez yesterday, where she was talking about how they've kind of gone away from some of that outside zone stuff. Fran talked about this as well, doing more duo, doing more of that kind of thing. Looking at the Rams offense now, and for those of you who don't know, the Fangio McVay thing goes back to that 2018 game where he was with Denver and he played the 6-1 front against, to try to stop the outside zone.
I think he was Chicago then.
Sorry, when he was with Chicago, yes, that's what I meant.
Last year.
Last year at Chicago with that very talented Chicago defense. And they played a 6-1 front against that outside zone game and basically were able to outnumber it, right? Like they were able to get to the edge, get the edges and all that. And then Bill Belichick famously did that in the Super Bowl and held the Rams to, I don't remember how many points it was, but it was like one of the lowest scoring Super Bowls ever. So, the offense still does some of that stuff. Like, it's not like they don't do it. They still run a decent amount of under center runs. They still do a lot of under center play action, but it is a little bit different than it has. More 12 personnel, as Fran mentioned. It's up to 17% for the year, which is up from 5% last year. But when you look at first downs and run and neutral type situations, it's even lower. They're like 74% of their first downs are 11 personnel. That used to be in the 90s every year, and it was 100%. Like in some of the years, Just 52% 11 personnel on first downs last week. They were at 40% against the Vikings, the first game that Kupp and Nacua were back, and those are their best 2 games of the year on offense. So they've actually been heavier 12 personnel on early downs in their best games, like in the games where Stafford and the offense in general has been more successful. They still look familiar on film. They still look like a McVay offense, the condensed splits and all of that, 80% motion. They are running more pistol this year than they've ever done before. They didn't run a single snap of pistol against the Eagles last year.
Wow.
This year, they're 21%, which is third most in the league. And the fourth most is like 12% or something. So there's like 3 teams that run a lot of pistol, and they're one of them. And then they will run some of the stuff we used to see them do from under center, like the outside zone stuff. They'll run that a lot from pistol now, as opposed to from under center, which is kind of interesting. Like it leads to a different kind of play action game out of that as well. They have a lot of interesting gap scheme runs. Like they have this counter run. I saw a breakdown of this by Ted Wynn on Twitter this week, and it was cool. Like, and it shows up on film. Like they just block it a little bit differently. Like it's just like something extra you have to get ready for. And I would say that this team in general has like weird things to get ready for on both sides of the ball. Like watching the film of this team has been far more interesting for me than like watching opponent film from a lot of the other games coming into this. And it's really on again, both sides of the ball. And then the motion guy, 80% motion, he seems more likely, this is just anecdotal, I don't have the numbers for this or anything, he seems so much more likely to be involved in the play than like when the Eagles run like Deniz Smith, and like he's going to end up on the backside of the play and the play is going the other way. The guy who runs the motion ends up being like the lead blocker on outside zone.
It's much more purposeful than just window dressing. Yes.
And not just like not just purposeful to like move the defense in his direction and then attack the other direction. They're literally attacking with that guy a lot of the time. Like he ends up being the target more often. He'll run a flat as part of a curl flat concept, which is the first read, that kind of thing. Where as opposed to like just ending up on the backside and like bumping a guy over.
I said it to Fran yesterday, but I do love when like Nacua is releasing through the line of scrimmage.
Oh, that's really cool. So cool. Yeah. He had like one of the first plays of the game last week where he goes in motion, comes back, releases through the C gap. The tight end is like blocking a defensive end, and he's just like running inside of him. And it's like, man, you could stop that so easily. Like it would be legal. If you're paying attention, it's legal to just slam him there. Like he's at the line of scrimmage, ends up being the target on the other side. Like coming back to the outside. Really cool. Just really cool looking things. And then I already talked about like staying true to my brand, like how good they've been at avoiding third down. So like they've been very good on early downs, but once they get to third down for whatever reason, they've had trouble. And a lot of the aggregate stats are problematic, right? Because Nacua and Kupp were both out for so long. That maybe you can just look at the game since, but it's not like they've been,
even then they're not. They're not like
you mentioned it the other day. They were like actually more consistently successful without them. So yeah, I mean. Yeah, we'll see.
So from a defensive standpoint, it does feel like whether this is it's not necessarily the best offense they have faced, but from a communication in the back 5 really standpoint, but the back 7, this is sort of like the 300 level test that they're getting. This is their toughest test, and for guys like Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell who have passed all of those tests so far. And you have examples of like the great things, the ways that they're passing things off. This is going to be a slightly more difficult, like in play situation to handle.
I think that's right. And the thing that I always think about with McVay is Jim Schwartz was very good against him as well. And the way that he handled it was he played a lot more cover 4 than he normally did.
It's like I like the idea that the crusty old guys are unimpressed with this whiz kid. Like this everybody else is like, oh, what do I do about this smart guy? And they're just like, I'm gonna play football.
Yeah, exactly. And my favorite thing about Jim Schwartz's approach was like essentially ignored the motion. Like just ignore it. Like, you guys can run all that stuff all you want. We're going to sit here, play our cover 4, and everyone's going to be in our zone. You guys have to come to one of our zones at the end of the day, and we're going to cover you when you get there, as opposed to chasing you and worrying about, who's covering you. Just let you come to us. And I'm very curious how Fangio handles this from a coverage perspective. Fangio is more like Jim Schwartz, like didn't play a lot of cover 4. That's what made that interesting. Like didn't play a lot of quarters, right? Whereas Fangio does already.
And by the way, just to cut you off, we appreciate everybody who's watching on the television, but there's still more to come if you want to check it out on allphly.com. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I mean, like it seems to fit, and it makes sense that Fangio has been successful against McVay because it's not just the 6-1 stuff. Coverage structure-wise, Fangio's coverage philosophy kind of fits this, like, it doesn't really matter where you come from, kind of thing. Like, you can imagine if you're playing a lot of press man, it would be annoying to be, like, chasing all that motion.
Right.
But if you're already kind of sitting back and ready to match zones and you have your rules and those rules work no matter where the people are releasing from, you're more likely to be able to succeed as long as your players are well coached, and they certainly look incredibly well coached the last couple of games. I mean, I was looking at the film, and the underneath zone defenders for the Eagles have been so good at undercutting crossing routes, over routes, ball routes. These are all things that the Rams run. Even some deeper routes in the middle of the field. You look Zach Bond, Nakobe Dean. It's like they have eyes in the back of their head, Cooper DeJean as well, where when they are in quarters, those are the three guys underneath, right? Bond, Dean, and Cooper DeJean. And those three guys are like exactly under where those routes are going. The guy looks open, but then you realize there's no passing lane to him because there's a guy, like 4 or 5 yards in front of him who's right in that passing lane. And you can just tell how well coached they are, like in zone coverage. And it's been so cool. And I keep writing in my film notes, like, great job undercutting the crosser by, and like write the guy's name. And I promise you, I don't think I wrote that a single time last year, like about anything on the defense, really, but certainly not about that kind of thing. Like the zones last
Christian
year.
Ellis had a couple plays, but
that's right. Yeah. Christian Ellis was good last week, I thought.
you're goddamn right he was.
Yeah.
He was flying all over the place.
Don't need to be telling you. Yeah.
I stick to the Bond thing.
Yeah. Fun thing about this game, Matthew Stafford, 369 dropbacks, 0 scrambles.
Yes.
And if this bit continues, he's 16 away from
the record
from Drew Brees for second place. And now caveat is they haven't been keeping track of this. At least True Media hasn't until they didn't keep track until 2006.
That's pretty
it's
good.
19 years.
Almost 20 years. Yeah.
Peyton Manning is the king. 676 dropbacks without a scramble in 2013.
Okay.
So Stafford's not going to get that many dropbacks, so he can't beat that. But he's 16 away. So this game he would pass Drew Brees for second place.
Wow, Aiden O'Connell. That's a funny
Aiden
one.
O'Connell is the other one. Yeah, and then Peyton Manning did it twice. In 2015, he's also
I love
on
that.
the list.
That's very
it's
up
such
my
a
alley.
funny.
That's
How
very
can
up my
you
alley.
not just accidentally? Like while you're trying to avoid a sack or something, like get 1 yard, like
even on just like on a play action thing when he's rolling out anyway.
You'd think so, but no, never. He just throws it away. If
of the 4 items that I got in that swooper poo poo platter, which do you think is the most likely? Probably Eagles touchdown
on the first,
or Eagles
touchdown
corner
on the first
interception.
Drive. I mean, the corner interception. Well, I'll see it when I believe it. That these guys can catch the ball. Yeah, but they're awesome at everything else. So. Even Slay doesn't have one. A guy who's gotten interceptions in his career. Yeah.
Okay. Anything else, my friend?
Yeah. Speaking of the corners, Cooper DeJean on the field. I went back and I checked. I was like, this is unusual for Fangio to just be willing to play nickel against heavy personnel.
Well, that was my question for you. Yes.
And it is so much of an outlier what he's doing right now. When you look back at his career, I went back to 2015. Not really good, reliable data before that. So all the Chicago years, the Denver years, and then the Miami year. And I just looked at base personnel percentage against heavy personnel only. Because otherwise it's just a function of who you're playing.
Right.
Like you're matching and all that. And in Chicago, he played 74% base. In Denver, he played 64% base. Last year in Miami, 88%. Basically, just automatic that he would have base out there against heavy personnel. First 4 weeks this year. When Avonte Maddox was the nickel, 74% base. Are you ready? Is everyone sitting down? Since then, since Cooper DeJean has come in, only 30% base against heavy personnel. Living in nickel, the NFL average is 67%. So this is a complete outlier for Fangio's career, for the NFL in general, where Cooper DeJean is the guy that he wants on the field, even against these heavy looks, and even in situations where it's like short yardage and they have everybody condensed. Last week, they played the famous 6-1 front against Washington's 12 personnel on a bunch of plays, including the big 4th down play and whatnot. And it was the contained nickel package that we've been talking about, 3 defensive tackles, Brandon Graham, and then Zach Bond as a stand-up edge on one side, and Cooper DeJean as the stand-up edge on the other side. He didn't have to come in and stop the run or anything, but structurally, Fangio is okay with Cooper DeJean being in that role just in case it's going to be a pass, and he wants him out there to make the play. And Cooper DeJean has famously made those 2 big 4th and short stops.
Yes.
Where he had to make a tackle, not just a coverage play, but a tackle play. And it's just been awesome.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
And you talked about this Rams offense is likely to, with these 2 wide receivers healthy, play a little bit more 12. And so
I think so.
That,
yeah. And if Fangio is happy to play this way, because the alternative is to have like 3 defensive tackles and 2 defensive ends out there. And basically he's like, like rather than have Josh Sweat out there, and he's probably going to get beat anyway, you know what I mean? Like just like the way that matchup is in the run game, I may as well be prepared for a pass.
Yeah. How do you feel about what have you seen in the few clips of Jalyx Hunt, if we're expecting him to be a little bit more involved in the rotation?
Now, since you mentioned Jalyx Hunt, I will mention that Jalyx Hunt was in the locker room this week talking about how good Teron Jackson has been as a practice squad member playing the role of Jared Verse this week. Now, I have no idea how that made the edit for like the 7-minute video the Eagles posted from the locker room, but it did. It was in there. I think it might have been a mistake. It was like such a short clip. They forgot to edit it out. But I feel like I was the audience for that. Since on this show, like the day after Teron Jackson got signed, I said, you know what I think it is Jalyx Hunt is going to graduate to be kind of second string defensive line. And so they needed another guy to be the practice squad guy. And Jalyx Hunt has been that practice squad guy all year. So we appreciated what a good job Teron Jackson was doing in that role. So, and while we're in the weeds,
chat, I don't believe anybody in the chat remembers that. So,
okay. Well, while we're in the weeds, the Eagles did make a transaction today. Did you see this?
I did.
They signed a guy who was with the Rams in training camp.
Oh,
so very curious if I'm looking up his name here.
Ochan
Mathis. They cut David Aneni, who had been on the practice squad for about 8 weeks. They brought in this guy who was drafted by the Rams last year. I'm sure Fran can tell us more about him in terms of what his college prospects were like and all that. 6th-round pick or something last year for the Rams, was with the Rams through training camp this year. So you wonder if it's like, to get information or something like that. But yeah. You asked me about Jalyx Hunt. I thought he looked like he belonged on the field about as much as Nolan Smith did last year, maybe even more so.
Okay.
If that's a comparison. Like you can tell that he needs to, maybe get a little stronger, maybe get a little bit quicker in reacting to what the play is, that kind of thing. But I'm hardly an expert at that position or anything.
The other thing that reminds me, the other thing I was asking about in the locker room this week is, do you think that Nolan Smith needs a sack dance?
I love that he just acts like a 3-year-old.
And that's what Slay said. He says, I don't want that.
That wouldn't be him.
And then that's what the Georgia teammates were saying the same thing. Like, that's like, that's how he is.
Yeah.
Nakobe actually, this was interesting. He said, Nolan has always been like the most talkative guy on the field. He's always talking pre-snap. He's always talking during the snap. Now with BG, he's number 2, but he wasn't like that last year. So like, as a rookie, he was not willing to talk. So
that's really cool.
So he has his on-field personality has come out a little bit more. Nolan said, maybe when he gets to 10, we can have a conversation.
Okay, that's great. There was a very endearing moment on the Slay Mic'd Up with Nolan Smith where he got that sack on the cross trap move, and then he comes back and Josh Sweat is telling him like, good job or something. And he says to Josh Sweat, like, we're not all blessed like you with those long ass arms. So, he's just like, it was just a cool moment where he's like, he realizes like, he has to overcome certain things and all that. And Nolan Smith, Fran in his breakdown, and obviously you should be a diehard so you can read and watch Fran's breakdowns every week. Talked about how like he sees Nolan Smith as being a starter for this team in the future. He's a starter right now. Like he is the starter. Like it's him and Josh Sweat now. It's very clear. And that's really cool. And Sirianni was asked about snap counts for those guys, and he said that they were all in their sweet spot last week where they want them. And that it was Josh Sweat played 45 snaps, and then Brandon Graham played 32, and Nolan Smith played 33. And so basically that's kind of what they want. Sweat's going to have the most, and then BG and Nolan Smith are kind of like, 2A and 2B there.
Okay. Yeah. We have a super chat from CDP. Bebe. It says, the Eagles have already taken New York's best running back and tight end this decade. Obviously, speaking of Saquon Barkley and Jack Stoll. and he says, should they try the same with quarterback, or is Colt McCoy busy? I do like the Daniel Jones release is funny because it is so predictable that it is like, well, you gotta, you know what, say what you will about the Giants, but you gotta tip your cap. Like, this is a classy way to handle this. Like, let the guy
just
go.
like the Eagles were classy with Nick Foles, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's so ridiculous. Like, it's such a pathetic thing. Handle a thing poorly, and then at the last minute, like, write a thank you note when after you spit in someone's face. Like, that's not that classy. Calm down.
Yeah,
Anyway.
I enjoy all these kind of dumpster fires around the division. It's very fun as a fan.
As it should be. All right. Last thing, you've already got your mind on the tiebreaker scenarios for the number 1 seed.
Yeah, listen. I mean, other people start thinking about tiebreakers late December. I've got all my.
I was born in the tiebreaker.
You know, I'll show you this, Bo. I have the Eagles against other teams' common opponents, like tallies prepared when the schedule comes out.
Nice.
In May. So
when the schedule comes out in May, how many potential tied teams did you have on there?
Well, there are only 6 teams that the Eagles don't play in the NFC.
Oh, okay.
And so because head-to-head would trump this,
Okay.
you only have to do it with 6 teams.
Oh, so it's really not that. It's not
because
that hard.
because of the
Stop patting yourself on the back.
because
it's
of the yeah. I mean, I'm sure everyone has this, and I already deleted the one against Chicago because it's mathematically impossible to be in a tie with Chicago. That comes down to that now. So there's still 5 left in play. The important one, of course, is against the Lions. And so this is the thing that I want to talk about. This game on Sunday is huge for tiebreaker implications for the number 1 seed. And if we're going to be serious about this, the Eagles are now 2 ahead of the Commanders in the loss column. We are thinking that this team's going to win the division. Also 2 ahead in the loss column of the leaders of both the NFC West and the NFC South. 3 ahead of the NFC South. And so it really does come down to...
It's a 3-team race, basically.
With the Vikings, I guess. Right. And so... looking at the tiebreaker implications, and I know it's kind of silly to say things like if the Eagles win out at this point, just because that seems improbable, right? That they would finish the season on a 13-game win streak or that kind of thing. But it's just worth understanding what needs to happen for the Eagles to get the 1 seed. If the Eagles were to win out...
Right now, they are a game behind Detroit. That's
correct. So, first of all, based on record, exactly, 1 game behind. So, obviously need the Lions to lose. Right. And then the question becomes, who do you need the Lions to lose to? Right now, neither of the teams has any AFC losses, right? So, like, NFC record is the first tiebreaker. If the teams continue to not lose to any AFC teams, then the next tiebreaker is record against common opponents.
So Detroit has Buffalo. That's an interesting AFC.
Yeah, all their hard games are at home. Now, yeah, if they lose to Buffalo, but that would be bad for the Eagles for that to be their loss, right? Okay. So, it's kind of counterintuitive, but like, given that you're tied with someone, you want to have AFC losses, right? Given that you're tied, obviously you don't want to actually lose the games because then that makes your record worse. But if the Eagles were to lose a game these next 2 weeks, it would be 1,000,000 times better to lose to the Ravens than lose to the Rams. And it's not just because they're an AFC team. It's also because the Rams are a common opponent with the Lions. Now, the Lions already beat the Rams, and there are only 3 games left in that common opponents battle with the Lions. The Eagles are currently 3-1, and the Lions are 4-1. The only way the Eagles can win the tiebreaker against the Lions, if it comes down to common opponents,
which is only if they're tied in the NFC,
exactly,
okay,
is for the Eagles to beat the Rams and the Cowboys, and the Lions have to lose to the Packers, Week 14 at home. If all 3 of those happen, then the Eagles would be 5-1 and the Lions would be 4-2, and the Eagles would win that tiebreaker. That is the only way the Eagles can win the number 1 seed in a scenario where the Lions only lose 1 game. Like, they would have to lose to the Packers. Only the Packers. Okay. Like, no other 1 loss helps the Eagles. And that's with the Eagles winning out.
Right.
So it's an uphill battle that way. If any of those 3 doesn't happen, then the best the Eagles can do in that is tie. But if that's tied, it goes to strength of victory, and the Lions will destroy the Eagles in the strength of victory tiebreaker. It's not even close. Okay. Like they have beaten a lot of teams with a lot of wins, and the Eagles haven't. Like, they just haven't. I mean, the Lions have wins over Houston and Minnesota and Arizona and and even if you assume the Eagles beat the Ravens and like Washington again and all of that, it doesn't even come close to the number of wins the Lions opponents have. And so basically losing this game would be devastating for the number 1 seed chances. It would mean that the Lions would have to lose 3 times and the Eagles would have to win out the rest of the way. So, I mean, just think about that, like how unlikely that is. I mean, that's a team that's 9-1 now. You would need them to go 4-3 the rest of the way. Plus, you would have to win all 6 of your games. Yeah, and then even then, you just barely get it. So,
a very big game.
So it's a huge game for that reason, because it keeps alive the path to the 1 seed that involves the Lions losing to the Packers, which would put you ahead. Yeah. And then each team could get a random loss or something, and you'd still stay ahead, right? So, like, unless it's to Dallas. So, So, I mean, the Lions have some tough games left. But again, they're mostly at home. They play Green Bay at home. They play Buffalo at home. They do play at San Francisco, which could be interesting, week 17. And then they play the Vikings week 18 at home. I don't believe in the Vikings. I don't know about you, but I know their defense is good. But
not like a number 1 seed. Believe in them,
I just can't imagine that they're going to still be in the running for the division like week 18.
Probably
right?
Not.
Yeah. No, we'll see.
Okay. Great stuff. As always.
Just a special guest wanted to call in and give a little surprise scouting report for you.
Yeah.
Well, look, you mentioned O'Shawn Mathis. You can't expect me to not call in and give you our scouting report on O'Shawn Mathis.
You wanted to give you the O'Shawn Mathis scouting report.
Oh, yeah, good.
All right, so 6'5", 250, outstanding length. 35.25-inch arms. Bo, you will enjoy this. He was drafted 1 pick after the Eagles selected Tanner McKee last year.
Wow.
So he's the draft slot after Tanner McKee, with the pick that they traded from Tennessee when they traded them to Robert Woods. So essentially, this was Robert Woods for O'Shawn Mathis.
That was the best wide receiver in football.
Yeah, so there was obviously did not get great value there on that trade. Although it's not like Mathis is, or it's not like Woods has done a ton.
Right?
Yeah,
not even Romo. It was Aikman. Yeah, okay, yeah.
Yes,
I think
exactly.
2017.
Yeah.
But basically the book on Mathis, I mean, he came in at TCU, and that's where he played most of his career, and then he transferred to Nebraska late, and was kind of like your kind of built like a Randy Gregory, like a really like long, spindly rusher. Had flashes early in his career. He was like 2nd team all conference, and then he transferred to Nebraska. And he just never put it all together. The production was never there. He's a 5th or 6th year senior and was unproductive. Went to the combine and tested okay, but it didn't test to the way that you would want for a guy that's kind of built that way. So it didn't shock me that he didn't really kind of fall in with the Rams, and why he's still kind of on the market.
I mean, as someone in the chat says, you have fully crossed into ZB territory with this call in. I love that you took us on and took it very seriously. As Mike says, you're a freak, but we love you dearly.
He was picked 1 pick after.
Are you not listening?
Oh wait, sorry. Did you already say that? I'm sorry, Fran. Wow,
unbelievable.
That's the 2nd time today, Deniz.
Sorry.
Unbelievable.
Sorry about that.
Speaking of,
did you guys talk about Alaric Jackson, Deniz?
No. I was going to ask you about that, actually. So Alaric Jackson has been starting at left tackle at least the last couple of weeks, right? But Joe Noteboom is back from injury, and you anticipate that will not mean a change, right? That Alaric Jackson will stay in the lineup.
I had Noteboom penciled in as the starting left tackle, and obviously he missed last week along with the right tackle. So they had 2 backups in, and Alaric Jackson was the starter at left tackle. Now, kind of following the media reports of the Rams, like no one on the beat core has been making a big deal about Noteboom returning to practice and saying like, oh, he's probably going to be inserted back in the lineup. I know coming into the year, like they wanted Alaric Jackson to be the starter, and then he got suspended by the league for 2 games back in August, and so that kind of derailed him being the starter, and then all the injuries happen, and so then they're moving Noteboom around, so then Jackson slides in, but then he gets hurt. So it's just been, it's been a comedy of injuries for the Rams in the offensive line. My guess is that it will be Alaric Jackson, and he's kind of like your lumbering left tackle, doesn't like move great, but moves well enough. So that's a matchup that Josh Sweat I think can win off the edge.
He's in terms of like moving well, he's a lyric to it.
See, I wish I had heard you mention Tanner McKee instead of heard that, Fran. Sorry, I was so. You know what I was doing, by the way, is I was looking up my draft big board to see where you had.
It's not that I have a lyric to it. I just don't like it very much.
To see where you had these guys on your big board, and I don't know if I'm allowed to say if I'm allowed to say where you had them.
Go for it.
Okay, this was sequestered information because Fran worked for the team at the time, but Tanner McKee was 96th on your big board. That's like
I love Tanner McKee.
Yeah, he was picked 188th.
It's the reason he's the quarterback in
and
the future.
then you did not have Mathis on your big board at all. So and he was picked at 189. So
there we go. Yeah, no, I liked Tanner McKee. I thought there were some really good things with him at Stanford. Honestly, I hold on. I got my sheet open. I'm pretty sure I wrote down Nick Foles while I was studying Tanner McKee. So there were a lot of similarities in terms of the way they moved. Obviously the build is very similar as well. So no, it's as soon as I saw, because I actually didn't even see the Mathis move. So Deniz, you broke that for me as I was in the chat lurking. So I was like, oh, you know what? Let me go pull up my notes and I'll do a little call in.
What's your sense of when a team makes a move like this just before they play the former team? Do you think there's any information gathering involved in the decision?
Has to be. Yeah. I don't think that it happens so often that they can't be coincidence, obviously, and so I'm sure that they're picking
he
the
was
brain.
not signed from the Rams practice squad. He was with New England and was waived by New England.
Yeah,
so
he was with the Rams.
He hasn't been there since training.
He was with the Rams until August 25th or something. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. So but he was there and has some knowledge in terms of what they're doing from a schematic standpoint. And it might even just be simple as like, hey, if they're going to call a stunt, like what are some of the verbiage that they use just before the snap? That might give the offensive lineman some tips there, in action. So I think you're definitely trying to glean something from those guys.
All right, last thing, Fran. How are you feeling about Swooper now that DeVonta is maybe?
Honestly, like I'm borderline like going to call party foul on this. The fact that you submitted all the DeVonta Smith entries, then didn't win one of them. You knew something. I was
willing to. I didn't bid one. I was willing to take it. I'm not taking it for 4. I'm not a moron.
You knew something. The fact that you did all 3 of them.
Yeah. So I did one of them too, but just the Swooper update. 3 of 4 Zach items that he won involved DeVonta Smith. Right now, Zach's only chance of winning a point is the Sixers winning. all of Zach's eggs are on the Sixers winning a game. And then, 3 of the 4 that Fran has are also DeVonta Smith, though AJ Brown could get you that one by himself if he gets more receiving yards than Kupp and Nacua combined. So, there's a chance there. All right.
Yeah, I'm not ruling out the party foul, though.
We got to do this more, Fran.
I care about this way too much to do something like that. Unlike you, who calls in favors with Charles Davis to get Swooper wins for yourself. Ridiculous.
He was,
which, by the way, those didn't hit.
It runs in the Temple program.
Yeah. Okay.
Fran, I don't know how you deal with this. I mean, like on the show yesterday, Bo tried to steal a turkey from Zach. Just like very clearly, just tried to say that he had one fewer than before.
That was my mistake.
And then Zach, with an outrageous attempt to cheat, way after the bidding happened.
Thank you.
Trying to change the meaning of or, which I'm a math major. I use the math version, A or B.
Yes.
Is
if
true
this happens, or if this happens,
they're
or
both
if
true.
Happens.
Yeah,
yes,
exactly. Yeah. So I mean, come on.
You.
Yeah. And you guys talked about it, and you agreed that it didn't have to be only one.
And then
you bid. And then like 10 minutes later, Zach was like, people in the chat are saying this. Yeah. So it's just.
And there were still people in the YouTube comments today commenting saying that, oh no, the or is not inclusive. But yeah, it's
it depends.
There was a smart math guy in the comments.
Look, I mean, I was a math major. I was a philosophy minor. I took a lot of symbol logic in college as well. There's a school of symbol logic.
You're so smart.
Thank you, Bo. Is the only right answer to that. There's a school of symbol logic that believes that it's the way that the chat said, but I don't think in common English that's
of course not. If you had said either, or like specifically,
and also you have to understand the history of the game.
Yeah,
like
of course. You would say one of the following
has had
things
this
happens.
kind of item, and it was always exactly one of these happens. Has always been the wording. Like I'm not gonna go against Swooper history here.
Thank you.
Yeah,
agreed.
Originalist. All right. That'll do it for this Friday episode of the PHLY Eagles podcast. This is exciting for the people who have made it all the way to the end of the show. During the game on Sunday night, Fran and I are going to be in studio doing a watch along for the game. We're going to sort of try to call the game like we're calling the game on TV.
Oh, fun.
During the game. So you can do the watch along with me and Fran. We're looking forward to that. We will also have the kickoff show with Jamie beforehand, and then the post-game show with the two of us, Jamie and Vinny Curry, after the game. So very excited for all of that.
Oh, Fran, while you're on, real quick, SDTV did not look as bad on actual cathode ray tube TVs as it does on HD TV. So it's not just your memory playing with you. Like, it's not like, oh man, we watch TV like this. The cathode ray tube blurred the image in a way that made the pixels like seem to blend together. And when you translate that and put it on an HD TV, which is pixelated, it looks terrible because it wasn't designed for that kind of thing. And so, no, we did not grow up watching TV that looked that bad. It just looks terrible now when you look at it. So
that's good to know.
Well, that is definitely good to know. Bo, by the way, Sunday I'm gonna go sweater for the Sunday night game. So just
Franning cast, as people are saying.
Oh, there you go.
I like that.
I like that.
Right. For Zach, who is boarding probably early. He's got good status. He's probably boarding right now. For Fran, for Julia, for the incredibly intelligent Deniz, and for you, fuck. We appreciate everybody watching and listening to this show. We will talk to you on Sunday. Thanks, everybody, for watching all week. And as always, we love you.
We all silly like the mayor.